Over the next 20 years, this generation of young adults will come of age and attempt to own property in a time when
I am a big defender of Gen Z, and anybody who wants to continue to villainize Gen Z and blame Gen Z for democratic losses, just like, I mean, they also try to do this with millennials, but it's even more so now with Gen Z. And they forget that Gen Z helped Joe Biden win. Okay? Gen Z was key to Biden's 2020 victory. Gen Z helped grow the Democrats' majority in the US Senate. 1/4 of Gen Z um are Latino voters. Gen Z is incredibly diverse, and they are progressive on social issues, but more likely supportive of radical policies and less willing to compromise on what they believe. But they are very politically active. And I think older people, especially ones who no, I wouldn't even say that. I was going to say especially ones who don't work in political outreach, and so they just go off of what their perceptions are, and their perceptions are Gen Z is lazy, they don't want to vote, they're the reason why Democrats lose. They have no understanding of how politically involved Gen Z actually is.
the cost of living continues to soar, COVID-19 and other diseases like measles continuously threaten to ravage people's immune systems and lung capacities, a brutal rampage by the West's apparent ally in the Middle East threatens to kill millions in a regional war, emaciated and decapitated children's bodies from said rampage are strewn across.
The way I've been thinking is that older people go by elite signaling, while younger people actually are more ideological and focused on ideas. Yeah, and I think we have seen that so clearly in the last year with how many Gen Zers are involved in protests. You know, you look at the campus protests, all the protests on college campuses and around this country, and Gen Z are not people who are sitting back because they don't give a shit. They are incredibly involved. They care so much because they've been handed a shit deck, and they are very racially and ethnically diverse, and very socially progressive in their beliefs, but unlike millennials are, formed those beliefs at a younger age and have been more active in working to see those beliefs turned into actual material change.
Social media screens,
I'll be right
institutions
back.
like
I'm gonna
public
grab some water.
libraries, crucial infrastructure like bridges potentially on the verge of collapse, and disaster relief resources go increasingly unfunded. And oh yeah, climate disasters, which should be get aforementioned relief, are ratcheting up around the world, displacing and killing more and more people. And amidst this societal, geological, and economic collapse, young adults must choose a path at the center of the empire for the next 48 years between two political candidates who genuinely have no plan to make any of that better. The only difference is that one of them wants to make it worse more quickly. And if you say publicly that the other one will also make things worse, a ton of older people will jump you online, flex their degrees at you, scold you, and genuinely insinuate that you are the reason everything is getting worse, and not, all the other stuff.
Yeah, very common refrain is, oh, if Gen Z thinks that things are so bad, then why don't they go vote?
Here to say, fuck that shit. Gen Z deserves better than this hell. And none of our political authorities or economic authorities or trusted elders are doing anything close to providing a solution. One party suggests plugging in the holes of the iceberg-stricken Titanic with our fingers. The others suggest that it hasn't been damaged at all, and in fact are looking to kick people off the boat who have pretensions that it might be damaged. In the halls of this vaunted ship, which took much time and technology to create, folks scream at each other about the metaphysical underpinnings. Some say we should have never built the ship at all, and that this continuous striving for bigger and cooler ships is causing us to destroy not only the environment we stripped to build them, but our own safety via the reckless compromises made in the process. Other people scream back that such ruminations are pointless, that if those people are so smart, why don't they figure out how to save the ship, that dying on this ship is probably the best of all outcomes anyway, and also the ship isn't really in that bad shape, you know? Oh, also there's a mental health crisis going on, which is probably unrelated. Alright bro, now's the time to figure out your next move. Look around you. Who do you think gets it? And who doesn't?
It's like
and I
that
don't
saying
mean
about
just
wise men
gets
plant
it
trees
like
will never know the
watches
comfort of their
BuzzFeed
shade.
video
Yeah.
essays and engages in Marxist Twitter discourse. I mean gets it. Who fundamentally understands the crisis at play and is trying to save not only themselves but as many other people as they can. Those are your allies. The people who don't want to believe that this shit is untenable are not worth working with right now. In a lot of cases, there's probably nothing you can do for them, and that means there's no reason to keep yelling at a lot of the people that you're yelling at. They don't get it. They won't get it. They refuse to get it. Some of them are worth actively avoiding, but that's up to your discretion, because at the end of the day, your task is to survive. There is a constantly growing community of people around the world who also wants to survive and realize that they will more easily and happily survive together. Your task is to find them. Here are some things you should maybe be doing over the next 100 years or so, if any of this is resonating with you. This is going to be quick and basic. You can contribute to your community in various ways. Learn how to cook. Learn locations and directions as much as possible. Perhaps learn how to drive, although we should minimize fossil fuel usage where we can. Learn first aid. Learn how to grow simple produce. Check out the Substack The Last Farm for info on sustainable agriculture practices we can utilize in community. Above all, be where you're needed. A common piece of advice you get under capitalism is that you should never
Learn
do
first aid. Learn CPR, you
for
guys.
free. And while I get that we have to make money in order to survive, I do think that advice holds us back quite a bit from actually knowing what it takes to survive and thrive in community with others. I would like to posit the contrary. I would say figure out what you are good at and what you like to do, and figure out how, as much as possible, you can contribute that skill set and interest to other people for little to no cost. Again, obviously the way that the world currently works is you have to make money to survive, but think about how more and more, for 5 more minutes each day, 10 more minutes each day, you can contribute more and more out of not just the goodness of your heart, but the real interest in benefiting the people around you. Whatever skills you learn, whether it's basic household skills that are taken for granted or specialties that take long amounts of time to study and hone, your abilities and skills can not only benefit you, but the people around you. All right, so in 2020, lawyer and activist Dean Spade published a book called Mutual Aid. It's about mutual aid. Mutual aid is an alternative to charity and dependence on the rich.
Yeah, I think Gen Z has really rejected the longstanding idea of individualism, and what I've seen with Gen Z is that they really foster community and have realized that okay, it is an enormous uphill battle to enact change at a national level, and so we're going to focus on change within our communities. And it's why like a lot of mutual aid is driven by Gen Z. Hackstock, thank you so much for the 4 months. We literally have no choice with things like housing, so it happens naturally a lot of times. Right. So I think it's them looking to see what can I do that is not just my vote. If the only thing I can do is vote, then I feel dead in the water. I feel that I feel quite hopeless because that to me is not moving the needle. That's not changing things. It's not helping people get housing. It's not helping people get health care. Just vote. Gamer Boy, thank you for the 5 months.
It's a term that describes a huge array of things and ultimately means how we organize to help each other without any single one of us having a huge amount of resources. Spade describes it as collective coordination to meet each other's needs, usually from an awareness that the systems we have in place are not going to meet them. You should read Dean Spade's book. I mean it. That's one of the things I'm telling you to do in this video. It's less than 100 pages of reading. You can get through it in about 3 days, or 5 tops, I think. In it, he outlines the 3 key elements of mutual aid that make it different from just sending money around, and especially different from charity. 1, it's about survival, but also understanding truly what we are surviving. Mutual aid projects work to build survival needs and build shared understanding about why people do not have what they need. 2, it organizes us to actually do something to change the world together. Mutual aid projects mobilize people, expand solidarity, and build movements. 3, it shows us that we can solve or at least mitigate our problems better if we work en masse rather than waiting for a savior. Now, we've seen time and again, folks, how relying on and praising wealthy people for being charitable is a bad idea. For one, it allows them to use their philanthropy as a pretense to get away with anything, including lying about their philanthropy. The most recent and pertinent case in our generation is that of Mr. Beast, of course, who built up this impenetrable reputation simply by doing several videos donating to charity and building charitable projects.
I get jealous of Canadians because they have universal health care. We just have Mr. Beast. He found 1,000 blind strangers and gave them free corrective eye surgery because our health care relies on the Willy Wonka system.
This covered for the fact that in addition to faking a lot of elements of these projects in his videos using editing tricks and lying about how much he spends on them, he has been promoting gambling to children, pump and dumping crypto, hiring sex offenders, and torturing game show contestants, among other things. For legal purposes, I will say this is all alleged, but you should check out Jack Saint's work analyzing this and Rosanna Pansino's work covering more and more developments in this situation. Rather than us go online and...
Mr. Beast cannot be the hero that we have, come to rely on. Mr. Beast is not going to be the savior.
Praise Mr. Beast and whoever else the next Mr. Beast could be for using their vast amounts of wealth to do nice things. We should use our critical thinking skills. If we're too uncomfortable to ask what these rich people gain from doing these projects, tax breaks and clout, or whether it's effective at all at solving real problems, it isn't. We should at least question people who have amassed large fortunes, because history and current events show us time and again that you don't get large fortunes without exploiting and hurting many people. You don't get rich by being nice. And we should analyze how, without relying on some nice billionaire who doesn't exist to save us, we can actually save ourselves. One common example of mutual aid is collecting donations of food to be distributed for free to anyone in the neighborhood, regardless of their income. Food can be distributed then evenly according to a structure that can be agreed upon by the people participating. Cooked using affordable and healthy ingredients instead of bought at a premium from restaurants, and delivered by those who can deliver food, either with their feet or with cars, bicycles, to people with disabilities who can't go out and pick it up themselves. This is how the skills you learn can help those around you. Let's see where we're going. Look for a mutual aid network around you. If you can't find one yet, you might want to attend your local. It's become kind of common to shit on protests for being ineffective, and while I do understand and share skepticism that marching around and yelling at people who won't...
Did you hear about the moldy Lunchable? Yes, but I don't know about you. I prefer my cheese to be moldy, so I'm actually going to start buying the Lunchleys now that they have moldy cheese in them.
That we should change things could actually change things. I do think that there are valuable aspects of protests that often go overlooked. For one, protests can be healthily cathartic, and that's a good thing. especially for people who grow up in sheltered, hive mind-like environments in which nobody seems to care about social justice or the constant death and destruction our governments and wealthy people are causing. It can be a powerful experience to get out in the street and yell the truth with hundreds of other disenchanted people just like you. But probably more importantly, it gives you a place to meet hundreds of other disenchanted people just like you. Now, not every organization that shows up to a protest is worth investing time in. I can admit that. But at the very least, it gives you a sense of what kind of mobilization is occurring, what kind of local politics are occurring, and how they work. And moreover, you can actually make valuable friends at protests that can help you become a more true version of yourself instead of feeling like you have to shrink yourself and your concerns to meet the vibes of the people around you who continue to kind of ignore these things. And these valuable friends can connect you with valuable mutual aid organizations or help you learn important ideas or skills. Protest basically never gets covered by mainstream media anymore, but it's still valuable in serving as a reminder to a neighborhood that a lot of people there are not comfortable with the state of affairs.
Yeah, I think that is something that gets lost about protests, and it's not until you go to one and you experience it for yourself that you really see the community aspect of a protest. It's not just, sorry, I have to sneeze. It's not just random individuals who have all, gotten together in one place to protest a specific cause. Like there is community building within protesting. And it is a great way if you are looking for that network, if you're looking for that community, if you're looking to be involved on a, on a smaller scale, even though protests can reach a national scale, going to a protest is a great way to do that. I was shocked when I first saw my community having a protest in 2020. It made me feel not so alienated in that area for once. Yeah, and I think people are afraid to go to protests because they just don't know, they don't know what to do, or they don't know what it's going to be like. And I think you go and you immediately feel that community aspect. I got tear gassed and was immediately radicalized. Yeah, that'll happen.
Incredibly frustrated with them and are willing to continuously shout it out and make noise because we can't be complacent about it. This is especially valuable given how complacent people are when it comes to certain political organizations, like the supposedly left-leaning Democratic Party in the US. The Democratic candidate for president, Vice President Kamala Harris, has run a campaign which mostly relies on contrasting her with Republican candidate Donald Trump. It is true that Harris proposes some better policies and is not quite as bad of a presidential candidate as Trump. But it seems she and the Democrats have convinced most of her liberal constituents that this gap is of a much larger magnitude than it is, and that this separation is more than enough to satisfy the problems that we are facing. And yet, her policy commitments and ideological commitments suggest the opposite. Kamala Harris wants you to believe, for instance, that she is so different from the Republican Party, but she is also happy to welcome the endorsement of very right-wing Republican figures like Liz Cheney, who she trotted out at a rally with the banner "Country over Party."
Country over party.
Sign me up. I felt the need to make that joke. She has courted over a dozen Republican endorsements in the state of Wisconsin alone, a battleground state. And may I remind you that this is the Republican Party that is still staunchly for tax breaks for the wealthy, more and more difficulties for labor, violent policies against women and immigrants.
I'm cynical about the reaction people have about voting. What we're talking about is not that voting is this thing that has no weight to it, no importance whatsoever. It's that there's problems within this system where it's, your vote is not something that should be the only thing that you do. One, the choices are often horrible, right? Everybody deserves better than a Kamala Trump standoff. So it's not just like, okay, people died to get us the right to vote. And once upon a time, a lot of us wouldn't have had the right to vote. So you can't just, it doesn't begin and end with voting. But that is commonly the response of, well, you just got to get out there and vote. And a lot of people go, okay, well, I have voted every single time. And most of the times my choices are horrible. So it doesn't even feel like something that I want to be engaged in, that I want to participate in. And then when I am told to vote for this person because they are the person who is, who is trying to make my life better, I don't see those material changes. And so phrases like vote blue no matter who, or commonly repeating this idea that voting is the most important thing, and so much much had to happen for us to be able to vote, and so you should never take your vote for granted. It's just that those arguments are not fixing any of the problems here, and you cannot keep convincing people who have showed up and voted over and over again that they have to keep doing that, or else their lives will continue to be ass. So what he's talking about here, he's talking about ways to be involved on a local level and to form community where you work to help one another, because relying on relying on the assumedly Democrats, since that's how Gen Z leans towards the left, relying on Democrats or really anybody in power to save the day and to give you what you need is going to leave you completely empty-handed.
Immigration, etc., etc. A lot of people might note that these Republicans are not Trump Republicans, and it's important that we make that distinction, and that somehow Kamala Harris happily endorsing people like Liz Cheney and saluting her father, Dick Cheney, as a valuable servant to the United States, despite being one of the most evil and violent vice presidents in the history of the country. I'll just let y'all continue to think that the Republican Party has so many different ideological commitments aside from orange man or not orange man. A lot of people might note, though, that this is a strategy to win an election. You can't just try to appeal to one side. You have to reach across the aisle, try to take some votes away from the opposition. Now, I think this naively ignores some of the many policy similarities, past and present, that Harris shares with these right-wingers. Obviously, both parties are fiercely supporting Israel and their genocide, with Harris declaring at the Palestinian Free DNC that she wants the U.S. military to have the most lethal fighting force in the world, and supporting President Biden in sending constant...
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, for Gen Z and millennials who are told, vote for the Democrat and push them left, right? Vote for the Democrat and that's how you'll get health care. And that's how we will address climate change. And that's how housing will be affordable. Well, you look at the issues of healthcare and climate change, and they've been a footnote in this election. Really, for 8 years, I mean, since Donald Trump entered politics, the Democrats' game plan has been talking about how awful Trump is. And it has meant that, we have gone backwards, even having had a Democratic president in this time period. The fact that the Democratic platform is to the right of where it was in 2020 is a very scary sign. And I think I think it's completely fair that a lot of people are looking at this and going, well, wait a second. I voted for Joe Biden because I was told you got to vote for Joe Biden. We got to save democracy. We got to vote for Joe Biden so that we can have health care, so that so that my family, who's my family, a family of immigrants, will be safe from Donald Trump. If they want to appeal to centrists, they can't blame leftists for not supporting them. Yeah, and I just think that argument falls apart of vote for the Democrat to push them left when our current president is a Democrat, and we have not gone to the left. In many ways, the platform of the Democrats now reflects the Republican Party pre-Trump.
Shipments of bombs to Israel. We know what they're doing with those bombs, and somehow her statements regarding the border with Mexico are even more right-wing than expected. She has stated she wishes to further intensify the border crackdown against poor people seeking asylum, and has spread propaganda via Twitter of fentanyl being distributed over the border by migrants, despite hard evidence that most of the fentanyl is being smuggled into the U.S. by U.S. citizens. America. As California Attorney General, she denied gender-affirming care to trans prisoners and refused to reduce overcrowding in prisons by releasing non-violent offenders cleared as having little to no risk of recidivism or threats to public safety. She's even goddamn said that the only difference that she would have from Joe Biden's presidency, which has been widely regarded as a very right-leaning Democratic presidency, is that she'll have a Republican in her cabinet. What else does she need?
What I meant by that is that Trump's agenda is so fascist and it's so extremist that Democrats are holding that up as a, we're the good guys. This is not us. But if you look at their agenda, it is in no means progressive. So for people who believe that because the Democrats are not Donald Trump, then they are the real actual party of the people and the party of progress. It's not the case. It's just that Donald Trump and how the Republican Party now reflects Donald Trump and MAGA, they are so extremist. But the Democratic Party has moved to the right as well to try and meet more, moderate Republicans and ones who have not bought into the extremism of Donald Trump's Republican Party, to meet them and be like, we're actually the party for you. You're not comfortable with Donald Trump, but you are not, you're not down with a platform that prioritizes safe and, safe immigration and climate change and health care. Then we're the party for you.
To tell y'all, nobody cares about these oppressive policies Kamala Harris has espoused and implemented because she's not Donald Trump. And when she becomes president, even though many people now are telling you that it'll be okay to criticize her then, many will still roll their eyes at criticism of her because Trump would be worse. At a certain point, though, we have to show that we actually care about the people dying and being harmed by our government. And we can start to do so through protest, something that we still have the right to do in this country. Mostly. There's a lot more to say, including about individual, community, and environmental health, which I'll have to save for future work. But I think that last point transitions well into my conclusion, which is about the necessity for critical thinking and education. And a lot of this has to do with my relationship with you. Many content creators have risen to popularity on YouTube and other apps through their emphasis on educating people or offering analysis about current events.
Olé!
This comprises a broad spectrum of people. What I worry about is how much you rely on people like me or other people you perceive to be in my niche or part of the same movement to tell you what to think, so that you don't have to think critically on your own. You can just pop our videos on in the background, feel like you agree with everything we say, and leave it at that. Celebrities and content creators alike, as opposed to the notion that we shouldn't look to them for their opinions on politics and stuff like that, have a responsibility to engage with politics and to build a political education, to speak out about oppression and immorality. And so, friends, it's time to talk about Chappell Roan. Yeah, you thought I wasn't going to talk about it, but here I am. I promise I don't have much to say here, but I do want to highlight a video by content creator D'Angelo Wallace, a creator who I think has put out some good stuff in the past and often does a good job of calling out immoral actions of public figures, but who I really think missed the mark on assessing pop star Chappell Roan's recent controversy regarding her vote and political views.
If I had to sum up today's entire video in a single word, it would be miscommunication.
In short, Chappell Roan has long stood for trans rights and Palestinian rights, often raising funds for victims of genocide in Palestine and refusing a White House invite due to Biden's policies on Palestine.
Yeah, I agree with this.
You know the story,
Yeah,
who she would endorse
as
recently,
well.
she said that she encourages people to vote federally and locally, but refuses to endorse either presidential candidate. Since then, there has been a whirlwind of misinterpretation and misunderstanding by people who somehow equate her to being a right-winger or centrist because she can't see the obvious difference between really bad and really, really bad. Wallace is one of those people, suggesting Chappell Roan should hire a PR team and that she is not understanding there are lives at stake.
I hope you don't settle for what we have.
Now, I've been cutting out a lot of her statements because they're a little rambly, but I actually think this is the first time at the very end of her final video that she actually finally said, yes, one is obviously better than the other. The quote-unquote news and pop culture accounts that are clipping this out of context and spreading it all over the internet are definitely at fault here, in my opinion. But at the same time, media training, a little bit of practice with interviews would have alleviated this issue. You're not going to
I totally disagree.
be presented a perfect candidate. But when one of the sides is actually death, like, for real, forcing people to give birth is deadly. Withholding gender-affirming care from people is deadly. Racism is deadly, etc. This isn't a question, it's not an opinion, I'm not exaggerating. Nuance actually is counterproductive when certain things in life are black and white.
I'm sorry, that feels so wrong to me. Are there not lives at stake right now? Have there not been lives at stake under Democratic administrations, or do we not care about the people bombed by drone strikes by Barack Obama, or the people dying in Palestine right now because of Joe Biden? He goes as far as to suggest...
Yeah, I guess the idea is that the Democrats are the party of life. So Democrats are really pro-life. Wild. I was never confused on what Chappell was
that we
saying.
should compartmentalize our critiques of Democrats and wait to express them after the election.
But what I didn't realize
some of
is
the policies
none of
on the
this
left,
is false, but shouldn't I be compartmentalizing that energy for after the election?
But no, we shouldn't. We shouldn't wait until a political candidate already gets what they want, being elected, before we make demands of them. I can't believe you have to say this. If we did that as a rule, Joe Biden would still be the Democratic Party's nominee and not have stepped down off the strength of many things, including the uncommitted campaign in Michigan. To be fair, it's not like their solution in running Harris is much better at all. But politicians don't listen to us before or after elections at this point. You have to speak up regardless. The necessity of speaking up to power is still extremely important for how it builds community and awareness and solidarity among other people. Why should somebody who is Palestinian, wants to work with and trust content creators and celebrities who refuse to speak about how all of their relatives are being killed off, how entire bloodlines are being killed off in their home country because the Democrats need to win an election, who stood by silently until they felt like it was safe and okay to express their opinions? When will it be safe and okay for Palestinians?
Palestinian and Arab American voters have historically voted Democrat, but the party has lost support for arming Israel's war on Gaza.
Democrats, whether it's Biden or Harris, Democrats failed us big times. They dehumanized us. We are demanding that we are looked at as humans.
If the Republicans were in party and Trump was already
Let me just actually finish
president
this.
and this genocide was going on, then that would have been the event of the season. And the tens of thousands would have been going there. But the reason they're here is because the Democrats are in power, because Biden is the one who's complicit, and Kamala Harris, and Blinken, all of the top Democrats in this country are responsible.
And while I can agree that Chappell Roan might need to do more work in how she expresses her criticisms and ideas, calling the Democrats the left is kind of silly at this point. I don't think it's because she should have just said Trump bad and doesn't realize it. I think it's because folks like D'Angelo Wallace, who might not be as experienced in understanding political critiques from trans people and Muslims of both Democrats and Republicans, can willfully misinterpret her as naive or privileged. Then again, it seems like no matter what Gen Z says, no matter how they say it, people will willfully misinterpret them as being naive and privileged. The Chappell Roan situation is a perfect example of that.
I like Chappell Roan's music, but I feel like as a celebrity, she's fucking insufferable. I feel like when you think of like the stereotype that people have about Gen Z, it's Chappell Roan.
I don't love Friendly Space Ninja's video on the topic either, but I do like the compilations he provides of just the kinds of complaints that people are making about Chappell Roan because she's choosing to use her platform to speak out about people stalking her and about politicians being bad. This demonstrates one thing. Chappell Roan being an imperfect orator and role model means so many have decided to dismiss her political ideas and requests for decency from fans as whining and suggest that she doesn't deserve to be successful. Gen Z, have you heard that one before? Both D'Angelo Wallace and the hosts of the Toast Pod, that there's one of those clips of in the compilation, suggest that she is not cut out for this line of work. That in speaking up against things that are wrong, she is somehow betraying an inability to do the whole job, which should...
Okay. So here's my thoughts. I think we have reached a point with celebrities and content creators where we care more about what they have to say than what is actually going on, and how there's this expectation, or I guess reliance on needing someone who's in the public eye because they make content, because they're a singer or an actor, and needing them to tell people what to do. I don't think Chappell Roan matters in this. I don't think any content creator should matter in this. I think your decision as a voter, I think your beliefs as a human being should not come from whatever Chappell is saying or whatever, some content creator is saying. And I think a lot of what is happening is caring more about what this one person said about what this other person said, and relying relying so much on a creator who you follow or a celebrity that you're a fan of telling you what to do, and dictating and fully forming what your beliefs are. And one reason why I've tried to stay away from telling you guys how to vote is because I don't want to do that. I don't want you to make your decisions based on me, one person who has a platform where I share my opinions, where I provide commentary. And, it's another reason too, when I cover topics, I stay away from what did this person say as this is the most important thing regarding this issue. Yeah. I try and be broad in my coverage, even though there are things that I'm specific about. But I'm because I don't base my ideas, my beliefs, my decisions on what my favorite content creator, what my favorite artist is saying. Hogger's got it. You want me to vote for Trump? Yeah, what I'm saying is MAGA 2024. And it's, I'm in a weird position this way where I obviously talk a lot and share a lot of my beliefs and my, I'm very opinionated. I share my opinions on things. But I also implore y'all that you should not put so much stock and base all of your beliefs and decisions on me, or that goes for anybody, right? And I think regarding Israel and Palestine, it's gotten to a point online where the conversation has become what this person said about what this person said. And it's nonstop. And it is now all encompassing. And so there are people who are not learning about what is happening in Palestine or in the Middle East at large, and they are not engaging in that way because it's simply a game of telephone, right? And it takes up all the oxygen. It takes up all of, it takes up people's attention. And it's a distraction, and it is also never something that I want to participate in. So you guys have to, you are all individuals in here. You're all individuals in here. You are making your own decisions. I will never make that decision for you. And I hope that outside of my stream, I hope outside of whatever streams you watch, whatever content creators whatever content from creators you consume, I hope that you are I hope that you're engaging in other ways of learning as well, and working to form your opinions and beliefs, not just based on what one person thinks. I can't make a decision. I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian. Me too. You guys are writing in Farley. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Include keeping your mouth shut about things that are controversial among even the most cynical of audiences. The common suggestion is that she doesn't deserve it because she's not grateful.
I don't think people seriously look to celebrities to vote, do they? I think look no further than the response to what Chappell Roan said to give you that answer. And maybe it's not that people actually look to celebrities on how to vote, but there's this expectation that if you are someone like Chappell Roan, then you must support the candidate, and you must explicitly support the candidate who is running against a fascist like Donald Trump. So it's this weird thing where do you have these expectations for Chappell? Do you have these strict parameters because you believe that she should be influencing people on who to vote for?
And she doesn't use PR.
Missed the beginning part of this. What did you think about D'Angelo's video on Chappell Roan? I think he missed the mark on basically saying what a lot of people said who weren't, full-throated screaming about Chappell Roan, but were saying like she needs a PR team. She didn't word this well. She should have said this and she said this instead. And I don't agree with that.
To express her boundaries and political ideas. And while we can clearly see that this is part of a pattern of female pop stars being decimated by a public that loves what they produce but hates their mental health, and whether people are being specifically fair or unfair to Chappell with certain critiques, I think this point speaks to a larger situation with younger people right now. If you're Gen Z, as soon as you criticize the way that things are, people tell you you're ungrateful. If you criticize both political candidates for killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people and demand better from our government, people will tell you that you just don't understand how a two-party system works. If you say we should all be paid a living wage, that we should have control over the things we produce as workers, or that we should all be guaranteed health insurance, people will hold you personally responsible for each of the Soviet purges. But on an even deeper level, this isn't really about Gen Z at all, is it? D'Angelo Wallace is just as young as Chappell Roan is, but he is still telling her to fall in line and behave more like older celebrities like Taylor Swift, who endorse Kamala Harris and coincidentally say nothing about genocide against Palestinians. I want to make sure it's clear that I'm not saying D'Angelo Wallace is anti-Palestinian, but I do think his take on Chappell Roan is ultimately invalidating and reductive of the real and necessary criticisms that people his age have about the Democrats, and of the necessity of voicing those at all times, especially during an election where people are paying more attention to politics than they usually ever will.
A majority of the people criticizing Democrats on a lot of these issues are Democrats, are registered Democrats. I'm a registered Democrat.
Frankly, this is about people who choose to speak up and, more importantly, choose to act up, who begin investing in mutual aid instead of praising rich philanthropists, who aim to praise critical thinking instead of public relations. This is about people who know that the current state of affairs is deadly and unsustainable, and people who don't. It's about people who can tell the Titanic is sinking and are trying to get as many people off the boat as possible, versus people who want to plug a few holes and get the ship sailing back smoothly. Gen Z deserves better because every generation deserves better. What specifically Gen Z is representing here is the young generation that refuses to fall away quietly, refuses to fall in line to just make money and stop complaining. Gen Z represents the younger generations who have yet to live the rest of their lives in a world that is increasingly getting worse and worse, more and more untenable, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it. It's not enough just to recognize that. We need to stop seeking the approval of old hegemonies. We can sit back and complain and cry in our rooms, or we can go out, online or offline, and find the people who are actually working to help their communities and build solidarity. My question to you then, dear audience, is what will you do? How will you contribute? Let me know what you think in the comment section. What will you do? Also, check out my Patreon. I'm working on two long-form videos right now that are going to be much more detailed about some of these things.
Yeah, that is the question of what will you do? What will you do? And what you shouldn't do is just spend all your time spend all your time engaged in politics in a way that's not actually being engaged in politics, but that's being engaged in politics as entertainment, which includes drama, and I don't really want to, I don't really want to get into it all, but I just, it is not worthwhile of your time, and it is it's distracting. It is distracting, and there are things that you can be doing with your time and with your voice, and it's not a lot of what it's not a lot of what is taking place on this platform in content creation, and it serves it does not serve a good purpose.